Hello, ladies and gents, and welcome to another episode of Cycling Insider. In this episode, let's talk about 2021 Giant Defy Advanced 1 road bike. But before we start, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe and hit that little bell icon because it's gonna help in growing the channel. And of course, if you are already a subscriber, then definitely thank you. So, Giant Defy Advanced 1. Let's first answer the question, who is this bike for? So you see, Giant Defy platform is all about endurance road bikes. So long days in the saddle, comfortable ride and a bit more relaxed geometry. So if you are in the market for this type of the bike, then definitely check Giant Defy range of the bikes. Retail price of this bike, as you see, is $3,300 or 2,600 euros or 2,500 British pounds. I mean, definitely this is not a cheap bike, but as you already know, I strongly recommend you to talk with your local Giant bike dealer and see what can be done about this price. I'm aware that now all the bike deliveries are heavily delayed, but I think it's still worth chatting with the local Giant bike dealer. You might get a bit of discount, something like 5 to 10%, or they might decide to drop in some equipment for you. For example, you might get, some cycling t-shirt, maybe a helmet, maybe a gloves or something for free if you are buying this bike. So definitely worth checking with your local Giant bike dealer. But we gotta talk about the retail price of, as I said, $3,300 or approximately 2,500 British pounds. When it comes to paint scheme on this bike, luckily for you, Giant is offering two paint schemes on this bike. One is this pretty classical carbon paint scheme, as they call it, which is basically a kind of classical metallic black paint scheme, nothing special in my opinion. And then they are offering this moss green paint scheme. It's basically hard to see the difference on these images from the pure black and this moss green, but this moss green is definitely like a metallic military green, and personally I would go with this moss green paint scheme. Of course, always keep in mind that the paint schemes are going to be different on different bike markets, so maybe on your local Giant bike market you might only have one paint scheme to choose from, but generally speaking there are two paint schemes to offer. And I also believe that if you really want one of these paint schemes, that your local Giant bike dealer can easily order this specific paint scheme, if it's available, of course, in your size. Now let's dive in and let's see what do you get for your hard-earned money. And I will kick off with the frame and the fork on this bike. So let's start with the frame. So this is a carbon fiber advanced grade composite frame from Giant, and also the fork is the advanced grade composite carbon fiber fork, full carbon fiber fork in the sense that the steerer is also carbon fiber. So Giant carbon fiber frames, lifetime warranty. This carbon fiber fork, 10 years warranty, so absolutely superb both frame and fork from Giant. I have no complaints here. And also keep in mind that Giant is a fully integrated company, so they own the whole production of carbon fiber frames and forks, everything from the raw material to the final product, and they are probably now the biggest bike manufacturer in the world. So definitely they know what they are doing with their carbon fiber frames and the fork. Now let's talk about the handlebar stem seat post. So handlebar is the Giant's own Giant Contact SLD fuse. This is an aluminium handlebar, and also the stem is Giant Contact stem, also an aluminium stem. I have no problems with this handlebar and stem that they are aluminium. It's perfectly fine, and even in the future I wouldn't bother in changing it to carbon fiber pieces. I would leave it aluminium as it is. Seat post on this bike is the Giant D-Fuse composite seat post. So this is a carbon fiber seat post from Giant, and it's absolutely great that they've included it, because you know that the carbon fiber seat post is going to make a huge contribution towards your comfortable ride. It will definitely soak up so many of the road bumps, so this is absolutely superb that they didn't cheap out here and the carbon fiber seat post is included. Saddle on this bike is the Giant own production, Giant Approach. I have no experience with this saddle. Saddles are always a personal preference, and you should keep your desired saddle as long as possible and even mount it on this bike. Now let's talk about the group set on this bike. So you see, everything from the shifters, front mech and the rear mech on this bike is Shimano Ultegra mechanical group set. Shimano Ultegra mechanical group set is an absolutely superb group set, in my opinion best value for money when it comes to mechanical group sets, and Giant didn't cut corners here, so shifters, front mech, rear mech, everything is Shimano Ultegra, so absolutely superb. I have no complaints here. Now let's talk about the braking system on this bike. So you see, this is a hydraulic disc brakes, Shimano Ultegra hydraulic disc brakes, which are absolutely superb. Again, no complaints here about the braking system, but there are a few small details that I'm noticing here where Giant has cut corners. First, let's speak about the braking rotors on this bike. So you see the braking rotors on this bike, they are not Shimano Ultegra braking rotors with the iStack technology. This is a bit a lower level braking rotor. I would assume this is something on the Shimano's RT 66 braking rotors, basically Shimano's kind of 105 level braking rotors. That's kind of fine. I wish they have included the Shimano Ultegra braking rotors. But another thing is that the front braking rotor is 160 millimeters, absolutely superb, but the rear braking rotor is only 140 millimeters. I think Giant should have fitted 160 millimeter braking rotor at the back, just because there's no point of saving weight on the braking rotors, because what you want is the top braking performance and you also want the best heat dissipation. And there is no question about that 160mm rotors will have so much better heat dissipation and so much better braking performance than 140. So in the future, definitely this would be the first place for me to replace this rear braking rotor with 160mm braking rotors. Now let's talk about the cassette and the chain on this bike. So the cassette is Shimano's Ultegra 11-speed cassette, and this is 1134 cassette. Absolutely great, Ultegra level cassette, superb, and I like that the range is so huge, 1134. It's a proper endurance bike. Chain, okay, they've shifted to the KMC chain, KMC X11EL1. You can think about it as the same level as the Shimano's Ultegra level chains, so I have no problems with this KMC level chain. Of course, in the future, if you are really interested, you can always replace it with the Shimano Ultegra level chain, but personally, run it until you destroy it and then think about changing it. Now let's talk about the crankset. So you see, the crankset is another area where Giant has cut corners a little bit, because this bike comes with Shimano RS510 crankset, and this crankset is 50-34 chainrings. So 50-34 chainrings, which are paired with 11-34 cassette at the back, so you absolutely have no problems in attacking any steep mountains, and this is definitely gearing focused on the long days in the saddle. But you see, this Shimano RS510 crankset, this crankset basically sits below Shimano 105 crankset and definitely below Shimano Ultegra level crankset, so it's a cheaper version. I mean, it's perfectly fine, there's nothing wrong with it, but I still think that they should have put basically at least Shimano 105 crankset on this bike. This RS510 is a two-piece crankset, 2x11, 11-speed crankset, and it has different, of course, combinations if you would buy it on the open market. As I said, this one is 50-34 chainrings, and the total weight of this one is 908 grams. So, okay, a little bit of cutting corners here on the crankset. Bottom bracket on this bike is a press fit bottom bracket, Shimano press fit bottom bracket. I'm not expecting any creaking noises, just because Giant knows how to do quality carbon fiber frames, and that's all about quality carbon fiber frames and the tolerances, and then you don't have any creaking bottom bracket noises. Now let's talk about the wheel set and the tires. So you see, The wheelset on this bike is the Giant's PR2 disc wheelset. So this PR2 disc wheelset is a classical aluminium wheelset with also classical Giant hubs, sealed cartridge hubs, nothing special to mention here. This is a 12mm through axle at the front, 12mm through axle at the back, and this wheelset comes with the Sapim spokes, great. And you can't find a lot of data about this Giant PR2 disc wheelset. Giant doesn't sell it separate. The closest thing you can see is the Giant's, for example, SL1 disc wheelset, and the only thing I can mention here is that I would expect that the weight of this PR2 wheelset would be closer to approximately 1,900 grams or even 2,000 grams. So definitely, you know, not the lightest of the wheelset, but it's a very classical aluminium rim with the Giant's own aluminium center lock hubs. And I'm guessing this wheelset would come with the 28 holes or even 20 holes at the front, depending on the different design. Now let's talk about the tires. So you see the tires on this bike are Giant Gavia Fondo 1. This is a 32C tire, absolutely superb. You have so much air volume in this tire, and it will definitely contribute to a very comfortable bike ride. Also, you see this tire is a tubeless tire, and the whole wheel set is tubeless ready. Everything is prepared, so you can immediately run it tubeless, which is absolutely great for this bike. Now let's talk about the total system weight, total bike weight of this bike. And I found some data on the German website of Giant, which says that the total bike weight is 8.8 kilograms, and I believe this is for the size medium. That sounds perfectly fine to me. For example, I would probably need size medium large, so probably in my size this would be closer to 9 kilograms. I think this is perfectly fine. You can't expect anything super light with these endurance road bikes, and this is just an average bike weight like all the other bike manufacturers can do in this price category. So now in a summary, do I have any special complaints about this bike? I don't have any special big complaints, but there are two small details which I think Giant should have changed. The first detail is this rear braking rotor, as I said, which is only 140 millimeters. I truly believe this should have been 160 millimeter braking rotors, just because purely better heat dissipation and better braking performance. So this is the first little complaint. And a second little complaint is that they could have stretched out a little bit and changed this crankset, this RS510 crankset, into the Shimano 105, for example, crankset. It would just, you know, give a bit more value for money, but I understand they had to kind of cut corners somewhere to save the money, so that's why you see it on the crankset, and that's why you see it a little bit on the cheaper side of the braking rotors. But that's about it. Everything else, I think it's a perfectly fine bike, $3,300 retail price, or 2,500 British pounds, or 2,600 euros retail price. So I think this is gonna be it for today. If you like what I'm doing, please do subscribe and hit that little bell icon so you're always notified when I make a new video. And as always, I will see you soon in the next episode. Pura Vida!